Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we'll be talking about what the most OP build in Elden Ring is. This can be a controversial topic because of the multiple variables that go into a build. Variables like damage, area of effect, status effects, and practicality. Hello, I'm Max, and today I'll be introducing you to the most powerful build in Elden Ring using these principles. Now let's start with the most godlike weapon in Elden Ring, the weapon that you're going to use throughout the game, the main weapon for this build. It's called the Blasphemous Blade, and its main skill is called the Taker's Flame. The Taker's Flame shows off each of these principles. Now as you can see, we're in the worst possible situation, swarmed by enemies, losing hit points. And the Taker's Flame completely heals us, takes out more than half of the enemies in one hit, and even the enemies with their shields up, it's getting through the shield. As you can see from this fight, you can obviously see the damage, area of effect, status effect, and total practicality of this weapon and its main skill. Now let's go on to a boss fight. As you saw, its range and area of effect made it perfect for general game progression against multiple units. Against a boss, its range and raw power is also helpful. As you can see, each hit is doing a lot of damage, and whenever damage is taken throughout the fight, that damage can be mitigated by using Taker's Flame to heal oneself. This is something that has made many bosses a lot easier. As you can see from its damage, area of effect, status effects, mainly healing, and practicality, the raw, underestimated practicality of the weapon, its ability to attack from a distance, its ability to hit multiple units, its ability to heal while you're in trouble. The Blasphemous Blade is easily the most powerful weapon in the game, and possibly the only weapon that you will need through the entire game. Now, I'm going to take a quick plot twist here, because in the situation that you only have one trick up your sleeve, or all of your eggs in one basket, you'll find yourself unable to defeat every boss in the game. I would highly recommend, when creating a maximum power build, to take multiple different directions with it. Now, I know what everyone's thinking. It's time to hear about another bleed build. While I recommend having an aspect of a bleed build built into your overall build, I personally believe that bleed builds are quite overrated. At the end of the day, you'll see later, I'll be using my bleed weapons to cause bleed to some later bosses. You'll see that the bleed proc actually doesn't even do quite as much damage as a Taker's Flame attack does. So the point is pretty much lost. No, in fact, next we're going to talk about Scarlet Rot. Specifically, Rotten Breath. The stats to use this spell are very low, and I would say it's possibly the most useful incantation in the game. Using it at the beginning of a fight can proc Scarlet Rot on most bosses in the very beginning seconds of the fight, which can do massive damage by the end of the fight. As you saw there, I broke out rivers of blood to attack the boss. While it did formidable damage, you'll notice that each proc actually did less damage than Taker's Flame did on each attack. Not only that, I had to get close, and of course, unlike Taker's Flame, bleed procs don't heal you. Another thing you'll notice about Taker's Flame is it's given to a Mimic companion. The Mimic will actually heal itself the same percentage as you heal yourself while using Taker's Flame. Having a self-healing Mimic with as many hit points as we know Mimics have can be a very powerful and potent combination. Returning briefly to the practicality of Taker's Flame, you'll see that even the Mimic is flinching the boss. The boss is unable to do any substantial damage because it's so busy being flinched. As you can see, using Rotten Breath and Taker's Flame, we quickly tore down that boss's hit points, and now we are ready to go with multiple flasks left over to fight more difficult bosses. Now we'll have a clip of a more difficult boss power. Watch as Taker's Flame eats through its hit points. This is another very telling clip of the godlike power of the Blasphemous Blade. Now, if you watch closely throughout this fight, I'll be switching between Rivers of Blood and the Blasphemous Blade. Now, as you can see with Rivers of Blood, I have been having to get really close to be able to use its main skill, and haven't been able to get a proc of Bleed quite yet. Here I switched back to the Blasphemous Blade for a minute, watch close to the damage, and now there's the proc. As you can see, the proc for bleed damage was only as high as the attack with the Blasphemous Blade. Here we have lots of range, we're healing while we're attacking, we're at a safe distance, well, mostly safe. And we're able to hit multiple opponents. In this situation, that's not necessary. Now, I should have started that fight with Rotten Breath, the incantation. But, you know, nobody's perfect. So between those two skills, you'll be able to get through most of the game. One more recommendation I have to finish off your build that doesn't take much levels or really even a really specific weapon is Black Flame Tornado. Now, Black Flame Tornado is great for hitting multiple hitboxes at once. So especially against large enemies, as you can see, it does massive damage. This is my least favorite dragon encounter in the whole game, and as you can see, with just 2 hits, he's down to half health. Now, the main reason that I recommend this build is because up to this point there hasn't been any specific attack that I've suggested for larger enemies, especially the endgame boss. This will absolutely destroy the endgame's boss hit points. It's a little bit less practical than the Blasphemous Blade, and doesn't do any real status effects, but it does massive damage to larger enemies, which is very useful in a lot of situations. At any rate, that's about it for this Volcanic Rot build. Now, the beautiful thing about this absolutely godlike build is the stat requirement is not very high. I recommend as a general rule the main priority of any build to get your Vigor to level 40. After that, all you'll need to do is get the stats for the Blasphemous Blade, which you can see there. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm bad-mouthing Bleed builds. Bleed is very powerful in Elden Ring. That said, I recommend putting your stats in other places to be able to save some time for you, to getting to the point where you have the most powerful build possible. If you are going to use Bleed, I recommend putting Seppuku on 2 separate rapiers. That will proc bleed faster than anything. In fact, I'll make a video about it later on. Now, to use Rotten Breath requires 15 Faith and 12 Arcane, also pretty low levels for that. And the beautiful thing is after you have those relatively low stat requirements, you'll find yourself pretty much powerful for the rest of forever. I believe what you were watching today was all footage from New Game Plus. And so that means that, as you can see, it stays a viable build from that low level all the way up until here as you continue to put points into Faith and other stats. Now, I would say the next name of the game is Poise, and Poise. While Taker's Flame is a relatively fast attack, as far as its power and its area of effect are concerned, the more poise you have, the less chances of someone canceling it, thus losing you your damage and your healing. I also almost always would recommend this talisman. The Draconic Great Shield Talisman is basically a must. It increases your physical defense by 20%. I'd recommend it with just about any build. I think that anyone that's not making room for it in their build, even if it's a specialized build, is missing out. The Carrion Filgreed Crest is a little more optional. It'll make it so you use a little less FP every time that you attack. Your Taker's Flame is useful. If you want to use the Great Jar Arsenal Talisman, that's a great option too for lower levels when you can't hold as much, so you can raise your poise higher. On the point of poise, this is a fabulous talisman. The Bullgoat's Talisman adds 25% to your overall poise, I understand. And that's a pretty big difference. That can be a difference between being flinched by a smaller weapon or not. And that makes a really big difference when you are in a situation where maybe you've walked yourself into a trap and you need to use Taker's Flame to take out multiple enemies at a time. So this is a great talisman. And of course, this one is absolutely required. I'd recommend it. The Shard of Alexander adds 20% to your damage of all of your special skills, so in this situation it's Taker's Flame. I'd also recommend putting raw meat dumplings in your inventory, because if you use raw meat dumplings plus Taker's Flame on your Mimic, then at any time they're able to heal a large percentage of their hit points, and that is basically making them a godly Mimic. They'll almost never die, completely immortal. If you have any questions or additions to this build, go ahead and comment below. Overall, that's it for this build. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like and subscribe, and especially like and subscribe if you're interested in supplementing this build with a little bit of arcane, creating a godlike bleed build in my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and have a fabulous day.